Welcome to UberCube, the podcast where we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and tonight we are joined by a special guest.
Hi, Chris Moore, otherwise known as Sammich.
And we have our amazing host.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm your co-host, Magic May. Hello.
And then we have our other host.
Hey, it's Stu.
And tonight, we're going to talk about, we're going to continue our series on CubeCon by talking about Chris's Peasant Cube and basically the things that he learned, how he prepped for CubeCon 2023, and what changes and what feedback he received while, walking around the floor, talking to players, introducing himself, learning about their thoughts on his cube, etc., and his overall experiences. And during this, we're going to deep dive, in particular, into two different archetypes that cross-pollinate with one another, and that's going to be the Aristocrats, and that's going to be the Persist combo, both within the rarity-restricted uncommon environment. But before we go any further down this conversation, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube. We're going to enjoy our libations of the show. And since Chris is our guest for this evening, we're going to have him start out. What are you having this evening, Chris?
I'm having just a little bit of this Buffalo Trace. It's really, really good whiskey. I really do like it a lot.
Yep. And I'm also having Buffalo Trace. And I hate to tell Chris, but once this bottle's gone, it's probably gone because this is exceptionally rare in North Carolina. For a matter of fact, you can't even get this stuff in Lexington. But you know where you can get it? Chicago on the way to CubeCon. And
well, I happen to have another bottle at home.
Oh, well, there we go then. So we can make it a little bit. We have to make it until October of next year.
There
apparently.
You go.
And then, May, what are you having for your libations for this evening?
I am having another thing from Wilson's Orchard and Farm. This time it's Honeycrisp.
And how about yourself, Stu?
I am having myself a Saranac Caramel Porter. It's 5.4%, and it's delicious.
This Buffalo Trace is decadent. It's very, it's got nice caramel notes to it. Kind of
I got me a little snifty of Buffalo Trace as well.
All right, so let's get to the topic. So, Chris, give us a 40,000-foot overview of the cube before we go just talking about what you did.
Yeah, so this cube, if you've listened to the previous episodes, it's basically just a very traditional peasant cube. I want just a basic experience that isn't too overpowered, isn't crazy or anything like that. I purposely left out certain power cards like Monarch and stuff like that. Just a lot of your basic draft archetypes are in there. You have aggro, control, and mid-range and everything. And as Anthony mentioned, we also have the Aristocrats. And the Persist combo is a fun little thing I stuck in there. And no one's really ever pulled it off until I heard someone did it at CubeCon. So I thought that was really neat.
So we got an early on-board, on-deck curveball. As he says, slightly lower powered, I immediately latch into the Persist combo. And here's something that's borderline tested in a lot of powered vintage cubes. May not be the most successful, but it's definitely hitting the peak of the apex there.
Yeah, except it's really difficult to pull off. You get 4 or 5 card combo, basically.
Right. And we'll talk about that more in depth as we move through. But I wanted to ask, what was your favorite cube? Before we even go into the details of your cube, what was your favorite cube that you drafted while at CubeCon 2023?
To me, it was a really interesting one. It was the Reading Rainbow Cube. I thought that was a really fun one to draft. I drafted it completely wrong because I went in completely blind and I had no idea what I was doing. But once I figured it out, it was a really fun cube. It's one cube where you get a land that taps for any color to cast multicolor spells. Everybody just gets one of those. And every card in the cube is multicolor. And it was a really fun, interesting draft, casting cards that I've never played before, so it was really fun.
May, would you say that's the best part of CubeCon, the ability to draft different cubes? Would you have a similar experience?
Oh, yeah. I didn't get a chance to draft the Reading Rainbow Cube, but it will be on my list for next year. And I'm glad that it was such a good time for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Stu, did you have any significant memories? We really didn't get a chance to talk to Stu after we left CubeCon.
I actually had a bit of an epiphany. I didn't do a whole lot of drafting in the main event. I was not feeling 100% and decided to spend a lot of time in the hotel, I will say. But I was kind of rewarded because I tended to have a pretty good record against Anthony in particular, as well as some of the other individuals that we traveled with, we did some drafting of Anthony's two-headed giant cube and Anthony's power cube. And I drafted one of the most busted reanimate Kikijiki combo decks that I've ever drafted in my life. So my CubeCon was amazing. And I met some wonderful people, had some good food, some good drinks, good times. And I'll be back for 2024.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Chris, back to you then, because we're just expanding Stu's win rate. Currently, it's like 4-39 at this point.
Yeah.
So, and the 4 is definitely Stu. But your best experience while at CubeCon, like an overall, what was the thing that was most memorable for you?
Yeah, so one of the things that I heard about secondhand was that Gavin from WotC actually played my Peasant Cube, which I thought was really neat. Not something I expected to hear.
I also heard you got some great feedback from Gavin. Like people said that he actually enjoyed it, so that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
So that's
it's a
really
well-crafted cube. I mean, it's a lot of curation time been put in this cube. It's extremely well balanced. It's one of our favorites to play in the play group. It's cusping that idea of the raw powered of not quite a vintage cube, but it's got the feel, the power plays of it. So other than that, was there any lessons, just top level lessons that you learned from CubeCon 2023 takeaways?
Some of the lessons learned was you can't worry about what people are going to tell you. Some people are going to give you good feedbacks and give you constructive feedback. Other people, not so much. They're just going to give you, I don't like this. This is not good, and don't give you any good feedback. You just have to kind of put that behind you and not worry about those, and just focus on the positives that you get from people, because not everyone's going to like everything you're going to put in your cube. And, you know, a lot of these are very personal decisions when you're doing it. You're trying to build it so people can play it and have fun, but a lot of the decisions are yours, and you're not always right, obviously. But the takeaway is just try to have fun with it, and don't really worry about the negative and the naysayers. Yeah,
so it's kind of a follow-up question to that. Your preparation, was it, I guess, like mine was, I was almost fervently adding things to my cube, last minute decisions. Were you pretty calm, cool, and collected?
I wasn't terribly worried about it. I had already removed all what I consider to be the power outliers well before this was even chosen. So I didn't really think about that too much. There were a couple maybe that I was worried about. One of them we'll talk about in a little while, and some that were pointed out fairly early on, but I ended up keeping them in.
So as May does a just absolutely pucker face from drinking this cider that I don't think she's in love with, that I want to throw a curveball at her. Were you, in preparation to CubeCon, getting your cube, were you anxious adding cards last minute, not knowing if it was the right assortment before it was turned off?
I had the unfortunate case that Wilds of Eldraine happened to come out, and, you know, it was basically tailored for my cube. Where it's also like, there's so many things I want to throw in, but I can't throw in everything or else it might disrupt the entire environment, so I just have to pick selective ones, and it's, ugh.
Yeah,
but
I think I'm
thankfully it all worked out in the end.
I think I'm the reason why, or at least I believe in my own mind that I'm the reason why they did a cutoff date earlier than they did, because last year, when Warhammer 40K came out, it was a last second thing too, right? And I'm emailing John Terrell telling him that I have to add in some cards and they haven't come in the mail, and what should I do? And it was literally just a couple of days before they're actually pushed cutoff at the time on 2022's version of CubeCon. But those cards were significant. It really gave, as we talked about in numerous episodes, it gave Black like a refreshed identity in the artifact cube. So I I understand the pain that she was suffering as WoW came out, because it gave so many pivotal cards to make her cube just home, right? But yours is something that happened to you recently. Was you had a Commander's Master set come out?
Oh yeah, Commander Masters was awesome for the Peasant Cube. Yeah, but I had a little bit more time. Exactly, I had so many good. I had a lot of time to get that in there. There were several weeks in between, and I didn't add all the downshifts, but I added the ones that I thought would fit my cube the best.
So one that's a little off the topic, you know, we're going to cover kind of the Aristocrats package with Peasant, but one of them was Gonti, and I kind of wanted to know, Gonti, Lord of Luxury. Don't remember that card does verbatim.
Gonti, he's a 2/2 black. I think 2/3 with death touch. I think it's 2/3. And when he comes into play, target. You look at the top 4 cards. They're exiled face down. You look at the top 4 of them and pick one. And for the rest of the game, you can cast it by spending mana of any color.
So is that a risk adding that to a peasant environment? Do you feel like it's matches your power band that you're trying to emulate within that cube environment?
A lot of times it's going to do it once, maybe twice in a game, and in no way do I think that's backbreaking or anything. At this point, I haven't received or seen it do anything too crazy at this point.
So that's got to be like a real, it's Christmas, right, for curators that are doing rarity restrictions to see downshifts. But I can also see that sometimes some of those downshifts have the potential to be toxic in the environment. You won't know until you test it, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But at the same time, the excitement level comes on because you see something that went from rare to uncommon. And you almost have to stop yourself from adding all those components, realizing that, right? You have to be really choice in that. I think that's something, would you agree that a rarity restriction cube kind of happens with it more often than not?
Yeah. You'll see it like master sets are Christmas for a rarity restricted cube in general. And you can't add them all. Like there's a lot that were put in. One of them that I thought about adding in was Rorik's Bladewing that went down to an uncommon, but I ended up not. Maybe it'll go in at some point, but it has 3 red, which makes it harder to cast. So that's why I didn't put it in.
Because I actually do have a curveball question. In regards to power creep in recent years and how many sets nowadays just have such pushed cards, like especially with Ixalan that's been revealed, there's been so many like dinosaurs. Like we just straight up have a 2-drop 3/2 in red with upside. And you begin to ask yourself within your environment, is this pushing the envelope in a way that you're wanting for your environment? Is it something that you're concerned about?
I'm always concerned anytime a new card comes out, especially with a new mechanic that can just warp games. And sometimes with a new mechanic, I look at it as to whether or not it's going to be, like you heard the term parasitic and things of that nature. I tend to shy away from things like that. One of them being like an old one, like energy is an example of there, where the cards only work really with other cards that make energy. And you might have 1 or 2 that can do the thing on their own with the thing that they do. And I really have to pay attention to that because you're right. A new mechanic can totally break something. It can break an archetype. It can make an archetype work too well, especially because I am trying to keep the power level a little flat in mine. I'm not trying to spike it. One example is I played a Peasant Plus cube at the bar. Had an amazing time because I drafted just this disgusting Rakdos deck that just destroyed everybody. But it's running a lot of cards that I don't run in mine for that reason, because people will just spike a draft like that and just destroy everybody. Right. And I want everything to be kind of on a flat, even playing field. And I think that kind of goes with what you're doing with your cube too. To try to keep everything kind of even, all the archetypes work. And new cards, you have to be really careful because they can mess that dynamic up. So I agree, you have to be careful when putting new stuff in a cube. Especially like there's like 3 or 4 new mechanics in this new set. I think, or maybe 2 or 3. I can't remember, like Descend and what's the other one?
They have one that's Ascend, which is it comes back, which is pretty neat. Did you see that they added both of those in there?
Did they? I haven't paid attention.
So flavorful. Oh yeah, I've been staring at this list all day. But yeah, there's a lot of introduced new mechanics that if you don't have sufficient density, they're not robust enough to support other archetypes. There's that potential. We kind of talked about the density stuff and when a new set comes out and how you make judgment calls. And a lot of that comes through playtesting, just like yourself and May, right? And I would say that in the thematic environments that May and I run, in particular, most of them, our opportunity to imbalance our environments with a couple of keywords or a couple of cards is I think is easier than your environment because you have a lot more platforms to look at and kind of you can gauge it, right? Your power spectrum is a lot more robust, right? So it's a little cleaner, whereas her and I, we can throw our kilter off pretty hard, right? We tip the scales by adding something wackadoodle. Yeah, you mentioned energy early on. At one point, I actually tried energy out, and it was
did you?
It was a weird flop, or it was just parasitic and it didn't play well in the artifact cube. We did try it, it just didn't work, right?
Yeah, I do remember that now.
And
That
that's
was a
just an
while
example
ago.
of those type things in a thematic versus these rarity restrictions, which yours is, I think, is cleaner and runs smoother, right? It's a well-tuned machine.
Right, because I'm not depending on certain keywords like there's a new cube I'm working on, which is exactly going to have that problem, the expansion of that Sultai cube that I have. It's the same issue. I'm going to run into the same issue you're running into, May's running into,
Right.
where cards can throw everything off if you're not careful.
But it's okay. You through reps and play testing, that's what May and I talked about, and getting feedback, and having the constructive criticisms, things like CubeCon, these cubes come out better. And I think that's a big takeaway.
100%.
Another question that I had for you is, was there any particular cards that you know of? Because I know you moved around the room that were perhaps red flagged.
Yeah, one was brought to my attention, and it was one from 40K, which when I put it in, it didn't seem all that bad because, it was a 4-drop. But, I guess I didn't really think about it. I just needed a Sammich card. I was Trigun Prime. It's a 2 and a green and a blue. And it has this thing called Subterranean Assault. It says when it attacks, put a counter on it and a counter on up to one other target attacking creature, and that creature can't be blocked. So this thing becomes a 5/5 on attack, and it makes another thing bigger. And I was basically told this thing is a kill on sight, no matter what. You have to kill it, otherwise it will kill you. And I just hadn't really thought about it. It has never come up in our meta at all. And, that was really great to hear. So I'm kind of thinking whether it should stay in or not at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, that card's really cracked. It
Yep.
feels like it's a very, very powerful card in a peasant environment. And when you have something that just makes itself and something else unblockable and scale, that it just can get out of control really fast. And 4 mana is not a big ask
No.
in Simic.
I think I really just wanted something to pull someone into Simic because not many people wanted to play Simic because there just wasn't enough there. There's +1/+1 counters, which this fits the theme. So I thought, great, we got something new and a cool little tool. And, I just wasn't really considering that part of it. And May is absolutely right. This card is very good.
It's on the same axis for me as Kappa Cannoneer.
Yeah.
It looks a lot like that, plays a lot like it, where it caught me off guard too. When it entered the battlefield, it put a counter on itself, it became unblockable, it did all the things, it emulated the same idea. Although this is more color restrictive, it literally almost said that minus the ward portion, right? So it feels a lot like Kappa Cannoneer. So I think that is a fair assessment to put this on a watch list, if not, maybe consider.
Yeah, I was given the Shark to Crab as a potential replacement for it. That kind of does the +1/+1 counter thing, but also isn't as busted. So
Yeah, I would agree with
and
that
I'm considering
100%.
that one, yeah.
So May, would you mind leading the questions as we move over? We're going to drill down the topic. That's the top level of Chris's experiences, which we got some pretty solid feedback there. It was a lot like May and I's in both stews, where we just got this wonderful constructive feedback coming back to us. The players are welcoming, people enjoyed our environments. Chris got to be featured. It was just an exciting event all around. But now we're going to kind of deep dive and tunnel into, I guess, a couple of the packages that Chris highlighted were other players had said that these were quite amazing in this environment. May, would you mind leading these questions, please?
Absolutely. So, in specific regards to your Mardu Aristocrats package, what was your player feedback on its performance?
I know I talked to at least a couple different people that said they did very well, either 2-1 or 3-0'd with the Mardu Aristocrats deck. Just the sacrifice and the ability to drain is really what did it for them. I can't wait to see the actual deck lists and the photos and everything, because I don't think that they've given that yet as of recording this. So I'm really looking forward to seeing each person's draft from that and what they took and what they didn't. I'd like to see what the 3-0 deck was through each of the pods and everything like that, because that will be the biggest help right there.
Mm-hmm. So the next question I have for you is, what worked and what didn't within this package?
Well, right now, that goes back to that question. I don't have all the answers for that. I talked to some people, but didn't get the full picture on that. So I'm sorry. I don't have a huge answer for that. I do know that like Sir Conrad was quite good.
What's cool about the Aristocrats package is that a majority of the good cards in Aristocrats were already uncommon, but recently getting Judith, the Scourge Diva at uncommon, was huge in this package.
And that's why I cut one of the major packages, the Mayhem Double. I cut that for Judith because I think Judith is actually a little better because it makes you, it puts the aggressive side on it too, because it gives all your creatures +1/+0. And
what does Judith do exactly?
Judith is a 1 black red legendary creature, human shaman 2/2. Other creatures you control get +1/+0, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to any target.
Non-token, boo.
Yeah, that is kind of stinky, but we have lots of other cards that can handle those tokens for you, so it's quite all right.
So, Chris, would you mind taking so we've talked about, there's an Aristocrats episode that Stu and I did early on before May was part of the show, and if you want to listen to that, give it a whirl. It's not our best work, but it was our work all the same, right? We covered some of these, but since then there's been more additions, and I would say that Chris's list is even more robust than the list that I provided during that particular episode, because I was keeping it like the highest tier of Aristocrats and trying to make a package that could go into not a powered vintage, but maybe a vintage environment for a top scale, because it can work in that, but it works exceptionally well. It's one of my favorite archetypes to draft in this environment. Would you mind just kind of giving an overview of some of these components and reading some of these cards to give the people that have Peasant cubes in particular an idea of what might work?
Course. So, of course, everyone knows that the Aristocrats package is basically just sacrificing creatures for fun and profit. That's basically the whole idea. You want to produce a whole lot of little dudes like little tokens. So the cube has lots of little token makers. Also just lots of little recursive creatures as well, and some with Persist, as we talked about with the Persist combo, so you can sack them twice. And it utilizes a lot of the engines, which May mentioned, were already uncommon or common. Very few of them were actually rare. Judith was one of the exceptions initially, of course, because she was rare. But you have like your Blood Artist, and Zulaport Cutthroat. Those are like the classic duo that, they each kind of do the same thing. They're 1/1s or an 0/1 in Blood Artist's case for 1 and a black. And they each kind of, when a creature dies, you drain an opponent for 1 life and you gain a life. They're a little different. The Blood Artist is for each creature on the battlefield. And you can actually, yours and your opponents, where Zulaport Cutthroat only is your creatures. So there is a difference there, but in a 1v1, it's not as big a deal.
I would say the difference between the two particular, and I enjoy them both very much, Zulaport can at least be a viable attacker, right? That's always a plus, right? Whereas Blood Artist is, well, things have gotten really bad, and I'm going to block on my 0/1, right? Or it's a mass board wipe payoff.
Yeah.
That's a lot of times what can happen with these. So as he's developed this package, he's made it so that you're not looking for the opponent or yourself to blow up all the board and go for that massive exchange of life win, right?
Yeah.
You're really wanting this to be incremental damage. This is the pain train. This is a slow, grindy kind of archetype, but it's
which is
very
why
effective.
It doesn't work in a powered environment, because it's too slow.
It gets outraced. It'll get outraced by 5 or 6 life sometimes. I've tried it. I've pushed it. May, have you ever experimented with any Aristocrats idea or considered it in the Fake Cube, that concept at least?
I have. I've been more cautious about it just because what makes Aristocrats strong, there's not a lot of gray area. It's either really good package or it's just kind of an okay package just to use the cards that would have died anyways.
Yeah. So
then you've got something that integrates that I'm a huge fan of, is like, we've talked about this before, and you've got that 6 secret lair art, is Sir Conrad the Grim. Now, if you've ever seen a pushed uncommon card.
Oh, yeah.
Or even if you're a commander player, this is miserable to play against. There's so many reasons why people like groan. And I added this to Uberbear's Horror Cube even before the con.
Yeah, I was just going to say the card that I was a little disappointed that's not in this environment is Deadhound? Whatever.
I'm not 100% sure what that does.
It was from Midnight Hunt. It is 4 black for a creature demon dog, 6/6, and when it enters the battlefield, you mill 3 cards. Whenever a creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from a library, each opponent loses 1 life. I love this card a lot because it feels like it's the perfect partner card for Sir Conrad.
Yeah, I didn't actually consider that one. That one's actually pretty darn cool. I do remember looking at that card, but I saw the 6 mana, and that kind of scared me away from it. That's part of the issue, because I don't have a whole lot at the top end of the black. There is some there, obviously, because we do have a small reanimator package for that, for some of the bigger cards. But yeah, that's a card I would consider, because it is a 6/6, so that actually makes a big difference.
That's a beater, and it really ties in. And Sir Conrad being the 5/4, now that she's said that, That's kind of chocolate peanut butter a little bit. I like
It
that,
is,
right?
yeah.
Because Sir Conrad's a legendary creature, human knight, 5/4, as I just said. Whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then you can pay 1 colorless, 1 black. Each player mills a card. Now that she's mentioned, what was the name of that card again, May?
Dreadhound.
You can see where that's pretty good synergy. That's pretty good synergy.
Yeah, it works out pretty well together. The problem is one's 5, one's 6. If they
I'm going
cost
to
a
curve
little
right
less,
into
you know.
those two. I'd be happily curve into that idea. It sounds horrible. 11 damage on the board that's punishing you.
It's potentially bad. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely good feedback. Thank you, May. I appreciate that.
I like that. I like that.
It's a spooky card.
It's
It
a
is.
spooky
It
card.
is absolutely. I remember the art now too.
I'll have to look at that for my horror cube as well. That's interesting. That's one I overlooked. This next one, though, is a really cool one. It's from 40K. And I remember when this came out, these are the cards that maybe Peasant curators potentially overlooked. Some of these are standard bearers, right? We got Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat. And if you're running those, then they're kind of expected. This one's interesting. Would you mind covering this one?
Yeah, it's from 40K, and it's Sanguinary Priest. It's 3 colorless and a black for a 2/4, and it is, and oh god, it's some kind of a word cleric. I can't pronounce it from here. Lifelink, and it has and it has whenever a creature you control dies, Sanguinary Priest deals 1 damage to any target. So it kind of works like Judith does, but in this case, any creature. The token clause is not in there. So it's kind of nice, and I actually think I replaced the 2/2 flying vampire that's kind of like Blood Artist that costs the same. But I thought this was better being a 2/4. It helps gum up the ground a little bit, and that lifelink is
It goes
great.
into combat really well, and it also blocks exceptionally well with that 4. It really
Exactly.
probably is a menace to aggro, I think, in this environment. At least
It is,
It's
yeah.
killing that payoff that they're looking for with those fast Savannah Lion type cards. coming
Yeah,
in, right?
but that's why we have cards like Flame Slash and stuff to help
Right.
with stuff like that. Because
Yeah. So this next one's I'm a huge fan of, and it's Bastion of Remembrance. I just love everything about this card. And for 2 colorless and 1 black, you get an enchantment. Let me pause there. How difficult is it to deal with enchantments in a peasant environment? Is it
it's
something that
not
sticks?
not that difficult. Yeah, I've put in enough tools in there, I believe, to help take care of these problems. And this would be a problem, but
Yeah.
we do have ways to deal with them. We have ways to destroy permanents, ways to destroy all those kind of things.
So when Bastion of Remembrance enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. For me, I originally ran this New Bears Horror Cube, but I cut it for the Meat Hook Massacre. But I kind of see those as strange. Like, I know they're not on the same power spectrum, but they're almost analogs in their concept and how they work.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. It slots right into an Aristocrats deck. If you have this, it even gives you a little body to have it die for you. So
And what's neat about that card in particular is, to me, kind of like with the Sanguinary Priest, and I'll even say Sir Conrad, those are kind of standalone-ish, right? Like if you're doing Blood Artist and Zulaport, you're committing to the bit, right?
Yeah.
But you can run Bastion Remembrance and just splash it in any deck and just get the payoffs, right? You don't have to be. That's what's neat about these components overarching, anyways, right?
yeah, I mean, creatures are going to die, so you might as well
Might
get
as
some
take advantage
benefit
of
from it.
because your creature density in a peasant
high.
is huge, right? What was the total count?
Dude,
It's at the very
you have
top.
a total creature count of 239 creatures.
Yeah, there you go. So that's more than half the cube right there.
Yeah, so you've got a significant opportunity for the Aristocrats payoffs to hit a lot harder in these lower powered environments, right? And do you think that that's a reason also why this is not a high performing, not only the speed of it in the vintage environment, maybe the creature density has come down as well too?
Now, with Wizards printing, making creatures better, the density is probably much higher than it used to be way back when.
In recent history,
So,
but by comparison, you're running 239.
Well,
you're running 50%. Of
right,
the
but the issue with a Power Cube environment, your spells are better, and you have planeswalkers. You have all these extra things that don't exist in this peasant environment.
Right.
You have planeswalkers, but
Yeah,
they're not
two
very
of
good.
them, they're not.
Yeah,
very
they're
good.
not great. It's like they're uncommon. So
This next card is also, to me, just a fascinating card that you've added recently. And the reason why you called this a Mardu package is because you do have some crossover here. It goes into the Orzhov, goes into the Rakdos, and then mono black with a little bit of splash of mono red. But that's kind of where this package forms up. Would you mind taking this next one, Chris, and explaining how you added this?
Yeah, it's Ellis Ilkor, the Sadistic Pilgrim, for a white and a black. You get a 2/2. Death Touch. It's a legend, Phyrexian Core Cleric. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. That's kind of nice. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. So this was a recent addition. I had Cruel Celebrant in before this, which did pretty much exactly, I think, what Zulaport Cutthroat did. But this one just gives you a better body for the same cost and does kind of the same thing, sort of. It doesn't drain on death.
That death touch really just sets you up it just losing it.
It's a nice little rattlesnake. Nice little rattlesnake.
Yeah.
Yep.
May, would you mind taking on this next one? I think you would be a fan of this card, and I love it too.
So I've actually never seen this card outside of this environment, so this is actually new
This
to
is
me.
a Pauper staple, at least in my mind it is.
It's in my Pauper cube.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love this card. And if you're not running this in Pauper, and it fits Peasant as well.
Hissing Iguanar, which is 2 in a red, creature lizard 3/1. And whenever another creature is put into the graveyard from play, you may have it deal 1 damage to any target player. And that is just a really cool card in 1v1s. And I'm surprised that I haven't seen it before. It feels like a more fair Mayhem Devil in a way.
Yeah. And it reads now whenever a creature dies, of course, the new wording. But yeah, it's very good. It works real good in my it is one of the sole aristocrat style cards in a pauper environment. There's not a whole lot of things that deal a damage when stuff dies. That's one of the few. And in a pauper environment, the sacrifice deck is more about buffing a creature, making like a thing a 4/4, or buffing an Nantuku Husk or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's also like got a really, that 3/1 it's a very aggressive body.
Yeah.
4/3 in a pauper environment in particular. I would say of this package, when I was overviewing your list, if I were going to curate and make a cut, that would be the one that would be on the cusp, just because it was the odd duck. When I looked at your reds,
it is an odd duck. I agree.
When I saw your reds, it was the older card of the set where it didn't do as much. So I think if you find something better, that one's an opportunity. But for
totally agree.
For now, it's a fantastic placeholder, and it does something. But definitely in a pauper environment, it just gives you that slow incremental. You're upticking and just trying to get, because that's a very creature points driven type of environment.
Yeah.
Right?
So, if you've got Hissing Iguana in here, what is Phoresis in here? And if not, why not?
Well, Stu, you're going to have to explain to me what Phoresis is, first of all.
So, first of all, Phoresis is an enchantment, 1 and a black, and you get to give give a creature infect.
Yeah, I don't have any infect in any of my... my power cube has 1 infect creature.
I'm a bit of a fan of infect, but I can probably see why it would be unfun.
Well, also, most of the creatures are terrible that have infect. They're all like little 1/1s and 2/2s.
I would argue that would be terrible in here as well, because you're not really going to put an enchantment here that's really only going to be good on something like Hissing Iguana.
Yeah, you're not running Invigorate or anything like that.
But maybe in the
this.
future?
This is normally the part where Stu tells you to add Oko to all your cubes.
I know.
Well, so, yeah.
Free Oko!
And then we've got this really cool one that I'm a huge fan of, because I also run this in Uberbear's Horror Cube. And it's for me, my little splash of devils that I have. But in this case, it's Spiteful Prankster. For 2 colorless and 1 red, you get a 3/2 creature devil. As long as it's your turn, Spiteful Prankster has first strike. Let's break that down for a second. That really plays into an aggressive body. Everything about that says that you want to go into combat. That's the different, for me, that's what makes this card so uniquely different, opposed to like the Blood Artist, that are really just waiting for the mechanic sacrifice, options to happen, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this card is very much inspired to go into combat. And then it has the rest of this text. Whenever another creature dies, Spiteful Prankster deals 1 damage to target player or Planeswalker, which isn't flavor text in your queue because you do in fact have 2 of them. So there may be some reasons as to you might want to use that. But in the case of my horror cube, this just fit all my flavors and everything I was looking for. And it's literally a devil lighting a dove on fire, pitching it, which is just hideous and disturbing all in itself. So I love everything about this card. And I like the fact that it's aggressively built.
Yeah, I really like this card. It works well in the environment. And May, that's something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what's interesting about this card is that it is the perfect example of how power creep might affect your environment, where it took a card that was just kind of okay-ish before, and now it's actually going to be a threat in that slot. And that is the difference of how much text gets added onto creatures nowadays compared to what they used to.
If you put that in comparison with like hissing Iguanar, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
They're the same cost.
From-
One's a 3/2, one has first strike. I agree.
It's the difference from a Lara to a Jumpstart. So.
Yep. My only real issue with this card is I don't believe there's a foil of it, and that kind of ticks me off a
They're
little
definitely 100% not, because I've been seeking it. Yes. It's amazing. So we kind of breezed upon it, but we talked about, and it was in my list, but it'll be in my show notes as well. I talked about Mayhem Devil, but and Mayhem Devil, for those that aren't familiar, is for 1 colorless and Rakdos. Creature Devil 3/3. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. But you said you recently cut it because you wanted Judith?
Yeah, I wanted to try Judith out, and so far Judith has been phenomenal. People heavily draft that, no matter what, even if you're not really the sacrifice deck. This kind of needs to be in a sacrifice deck to be effective. I'm not saying it's a bad card. It is really good, but I only have so many slots, and Judith just fit a little better.
It's also the difference between just being in a peasant environment compared to everywhere else, and that context really matters, is that in a lot of environments, you're going to have things like fetches or things that sacrifice that people just have, or nowadays with how much treasures, now map tokens got added, clue tokens, etc., that there are so many things that players sacrifice without being in an Aristocrats deck, is that Mayhem Devil really punished those, versus in a peasant environment, a lot of those good cards just don't exist here in the way that it does in other environments. Because, like, Pitiless Plunder, I think, is the biggest one that I can think of.
Yeah, and I don't even think I run him anymore. Or if I do, I can't remember if he's in there or not. He was... Yeah, I honestly don't remember. It's been a little bit since I looked at the list.
No, you don't remember anymore.
Yeah.
The huge variance here is that Mayhem Devil punished, as Stu stated, based on tokens. So it does kill some of those strategies incidentally, but then you get that optional +1 where Judith plays into the aggro strategy. Yeah. So it's kind of pick your poison type of situation.
Yeah, and
right?
I think Judith is... These are both signpost cards. I think they're both definitely signposts, but I wanted, and it doesn't mean Mayhem Devil will never go back in. It just means for now, Judith is going to be basically the main Rakdos card that handles all the Aristocrats.
I would
stuff.
say that Judith encourages combat, kind of like the Prankster did, right?
And
like
I like that.
It's a different type of Aristocrat. Yeah. Even the Hiss and Iguanar, even though it didn't do for itself, the 3/1 body was something that you weren't just sitting back hoping to block like with a Blood Artist. That's where these cards kind of take a different tier on each of them. Is some of them are just waiting for the thing to happen, other ones are just getting in there, right? So Judith really encourages the get in there part.
Yes.
Even makes your Blood Artist hypothetically a 1/1 for the attack. Worst case scenario, right? Yeah. Whereas Mayhem Devil is very parsed to that scenario, right? So I'm sure people are thinking about that. That's a hard decision because of all the token generation, like maps, and we get this plethora of tokens. So there are different opportunities with these cards, depending on your design.
Yeah, and I'm not
goals.
saying it won't become more and more, won't become better in the future, and it might become to the point where Mayhem Devil needs to go in because of there's a bunch of treasure generation and everything. But like she said, there's no fetch lands in here. There's, it makes it not as easy to set it up where you can use this thing more effectively.
Correct. I agree with that.
Speaking of tokens sacrificing in aggressive cards, let's talk about the first card that we wanted to highlight in Gut, True Soul Zealot, my beloved. And it is a legendary creature, Goblin Shaman 2/2. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature or an artifact. If you do, create a 4/1 black skeleton creature with menace that's tapped and attacking. And choose a background, which is just flavor text. In this environment.
Absolutely.
But
this card is a kill on sight. One of those ones. It's one of those ones that almost is too good because it can just close out games on its own. It is just a little too
clock.
Yes, and I have definitely killed people with this card.
And this is an interesting little anecdotal fact. Lucky Paper recently did a really amazing episode where they talked about accessibility, and this came up during the draft because we talked about in a previous episode, May and I, where I sat in my own cube and watched it get drafted. And as these cards are going around, someone pauses and goes, "What is choose a background and why do I care?" And then, of course, it wasn't a big deal, but they're like, it's just flavor text. But it really correlates into the episode, so I highly recommend everybody check out the episode. It was fantastic by LPR.
Okay.
They cover like these additional flavor text that get tossed in these cards and how they can throw off new players. So
I totally agree with that. At least there is reminder text on there. That does help a little bit, but not all the time. But yeah, getting back to Gut just, it really slots well into the Mardu Aristocrats theme, because you are sacrificing a thing. You are damaging people. You're draining life. You're creating a 4/1 with menace that can kill almost anything.
It's a scary card.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I might have the hot take here, but I actually think that this is one of the scariest Ravel Masters in terms of ceiling that we've ever seen.
Because you can
other
sacrifice.
Ravel Masters are great because they do their thing without needing other pieces, but Gut's ceiling is just so high.
Oh yeah, you sacrifice one of those little treasures or a clue token. Gut doesn't even have to attack for it to trigger, and it's crazy that you don't have to put her in danger to
Even
make
if
that
you get
4/1.
It once, you still got a 2/2 and a 4/1.
Right, you get 6 power.
And these are
It's
different.
so good.
These are different than, like, when we kind of use the Blood Artist as our baseline of it kind of sits there waiting to receive for the thing to happen, right? And then you've got your static idea of certain cards where it says sacrifice creature, and then the +1/+1 equals 2, and then the thing happens. Gut is a card that gets into combat and kind of really coalesces so nicely with some of those aggressive aristocrats, like we talked about with Judith and whatnot, right? Where you're getting into that combat exchange. You're not sitting there playing that incremental, which I do love, the pain train slow, tick, 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 tick one, tick two, or mass board wipe type, right? These are a completely different type of spectrum of aristocrats.
Yeah, this wants to end the game fast.
Yeah,
if you run this with Judith, you make 5/1s. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you're running the clock much quicker. So I like that a lot. It's a good choice. There's another card here that's come up oftentimes as, I think everybody has flagged this as watch listy, and it's fantastic, but it's because of the aspect of it doing the thing for free. And this does play into that, where I said you're going to have the Blood Artist on the field and you can get an instantaneous payoff, and that's going to be Goblin Bombardment.
Oh, yeah.
For one colorless and one red, you get an enchantment. Back to the original thing I talked about. Can we deal with this in your environment? Sacrifice a creature. Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to any target.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily strong. It fits right into any sacrifice deck, any aggressive deck, too. It's not just the sacrifice deck that wants this card. If you're trying to go wide with tokens, you want this card. If you're trying to just win with a Boros deck, you want this card. Yeah. Because it helps close out the game. It helps. Sometimes you can't get that last few 3-4 damage, but this can do it, and it'll help you out with that.
And as I flag this card, I red flag it, right? Because we know that this is a powerful card in a rarity restricted cube, and I'm not going to tell you to remove it because it plays so nicely into the Persist combo, and we're going to talk about that as we move along, right? It's actually an integral part. But May, would you mind taking on this next one that also plays in that idea too? The free portion of getting the sack to get the engine going from the aristocrats.
Sure. Next one we have a classic, which is Carrion Feeder, which is a 1 black 1/1 zombie. Can't block, but you can sacrifice a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on it. And there is no caveat on it. It's just you can sacrifice a creature whenever you want, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And the fact that this is just a 1 mana investment that grows is huge. It can get out of control very, very quick. It's especially good when you have things that overlap, like one of the popular combinations with it was like Mortician Beetle for constructed play.
Yeah, yes. I know what you're talking
not
about.
Running it
yeah.
here.
No, I that one actually I think was downshifted to common, and it's been on the kind of maybe list, but it just never really, I did run it briefly, but it didn't do a lot. That was the only thing with it. It just didn't do enough to be effective. Yeah.
I was just going to say that is the difference between constructed and limited.
Absolutely.
In a lot of ways, where it's just like, oh, this is a great high synergy piece, but only the sacrifice decks would want it here. But Carrion Feeder, I feel like that's already just such a good card on its own, because similar to the Goblin Bombardment, you just ensure your damage.
Yeah, it's a very aggressive card and aggressively costed, and it works well even in a non-Aristocrats deck.
Has it ever been like on the watch list?
It meaning which card?
Carrion Feeder. I'm going to say I think Carrion Feeder is maybe. I mean, it's an S-tier sack outlet. I mean, it has the ability to go bananas, and I'm just interested to know, during all the years, if this has ever been a card that you've looked at and thought maybe is a little bit on the too powerful side?
No,
That's awesome.
It's been very good, and any time anyone's resolved it and cast it, of course, but it has never, been so bad that anyone's complained about it. This I've never heard anyone complain about, oh my God, I lost to that carrion feeder. That's those sentences, that sentence never happened.
Challenge accepted.
Okay, great.
No, I've 100%.
I look forward to it.
100% complain, but I do that about most cards.
You do that about anything, Anthony.
That is true. All right, I'm going to take the next one because this one is a bit of a favorite of mine. This is a recent rarity
Yes,
shift.
it was.
And this is Yeheni Undying Partisan. 2 colorless and a black for a legendary creature, Aetherborn Vampire. It's a 2/2 with haste. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Yeheni Undying Partisan. Sacrifice another creature. Yeheni gains indestructible until end of turn. The fact that you can sacrifice another creature to give this creature indestructible and the additional ability, and the fact that it's got haste, and the fact that it can grows, it's pretty nuts.
It's a very, very powerful card in a peasant environment.
And what are you looking at? Like, to me, this looks like pretty much a finisher, right? You're looking at it, you're looking at ways, right? You want a clear board. You want ways to be able to just dump a bunch of mana, resources, whatever, clear the opponent's board, grow your Yeheni. Fine if I have to sack a creature to give it indestructible. I'm just getting a much bigger and bigger creature. And pretty cheap to cast as well. Like a 2/2 with haste for only 3 mana is pretty strong in the environment.
Yeah, I mean, considering we went from a rare to an uncommon, it's of course going to be a little more pushed than, say, your regular run-of-the-mill uncommon. That's what I'm not saying there haven't been very powerful uncommons printed, but this one, so far, I'm watching it, but so far it hasn't been anything that's too crazy at this point. Yes, it's a powerful card. Yes, it's something you have to deal with, but also the Peasant Cube also contains exile effects. So, there's plenty of those running around that can help with that. Doesn't mean they're going to have it every time. They're not. But,
did you just use the it dies to remove?
Yeah, I did.
Because I know, I don't know if it was in this environment, but I do know that we've had groans. This one, for me...
Hang on. Let me stop you there. Not dies to removal, dies to exile.
Yeah.
That's an even lower bar.
Yeah, so I would be curious. This one's, I think you're going to get our first pushback, and I'm going to get Maze on this one. I want to see how many decks this one appeared in your in this particular
I'd love
environment.
to see that.
We already know Gut's huge, right? If I had that with something like Yeheni, I'm going bananas. It's going to be hard to lose that game. May, what are your thoughts on that?
So, out of your 450 cards, you currently have 1, 2, 3, 4 ways to get rid of it, as far as I can see.
Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile.
Yeah, there's probably a couple others. I'm not sure.
Cast out and then dismember.
And Dismember has a very limited amount of time to deal with the situation as well, right?
Yeah.
It's a scary card.
It is a very scary card. I'm not saying it's not overpowered or very powerful. It's not something that it's on a watch list. It is. I knew this was going to be a powerful card when I put it in.
However, I will say, with the context of this environment, until you get the stats, I wouldn't say cut it.
Oh, I'm not. I don't plan to. I'm totally.
I think it's the perfect card for this type of environment.
Yeah.
Because once you're getting to 3, then you start getting into the cards where either you're trying to get. How do I put this? You're either putting this into like an aggro deck and you're trying to use this to close, or you're using it part of the Sir Conrad and a bunch of Aristocrats cards type deal.
Yep.
And even then, you're not getting like the full value out of it because you're not getting a bunch of +1/+1 counters unless they're also getting rid of things. But my point is that even though your removal is not very dense to actually answer this thing, outside of counter spells, obviously, but I would say that when it comes down, it even gives immediate value, but every time that they try to remove it, you have to sacrifice something to keep it up.
Right. It's not like you get free. It's not a free indestructible. You have to do something to get it. And, a lot of times the way to deal with Yeheni is to deal with everything around Yeheni. And that helps you get rid of his ability because he doesn't get the counters if your stuff dies. Like, it's only when your opponent's stuff dies. So, to me, it's been fine.
The strategy as to how I killed her in your environment is because we did match up with this, and we did have a match where I know one of our players in our group got salty around this card being there because it was wrecking them. but they may not have realized the strategy when you don't have the exiles is what he said, is I killed everything around it. I took away my removal spells did not ever point to Yahini. I'm going to force you to sacrifice your stuff to give it indestructible, thinking that it's a bait and switch type of play if you're limited on the path to exiles and whatnot to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Another option that he has as a curator, if he was my opponent and he was coming at me, if he was going to do the right thing, he would take Yahini and sacrifice it to weaponize the monsters for 1 red. Enchantment, pay 2, sacrifice a creature, weaponize the monster, deals 2 damage to any target. That is a engine piece that's much more fair.
Oh, absolutely more fair.
In comparison to Goblin Bombardment, but also doesn't do the loops and what we need for the Persist combo to work. So whereas Yahini, Carrion Feeder, and Goblin Bombardment play into the Persist combo as we roll up into it. But
you need a free sacrifice outlet.
That even though flickering stuff does not actually remove it, it does remove the counter. So if it gets too big, then they could just deal with it that way. Mm-hmm. So things like Flicker Wisp coming in at around the same time is a big deal. But I also want to add the fact that I completely forgot about Skin Render in your environment. Yep. So if Skin Render comes down literally the turn after, it can completely mess up beyond.
Also, and any bounce effect gets rid of the counters too as well.
Yeah.
So that also helps. It's not untargetable. It just is harder to deal with. So.
Yes, it is harder to deal with, but I don't think that it is a bad thing considering it doesn't actually power itself up.
Yeah.
So.
And also the power band at Peasant's weird. It's like a lot of the really good cards start happening around 4. 3 and 4 is where stuff like Yahini exists and everything. And one of the hardest things I've had with this cube is getting aggro to really work well. Because there's so many things like Whirler Rogue that just make things awful for the aggro player. Because they make all these little 1 power creatures that deal with your little X ones,
which is considered one of the most powerful cards in a peasant environment.
Oh, it is. So. It absolutely, and also you got Flame Tongue Kavu coming down at 4. You got all these different ones that,
But what I think is interesting is what we drilled down there is while the card on paper, I went with the dies to removal argument as we did, and we broke it down. But there's a lot of divergent strategies, as May and I, we've all kind of broke down also to deal with not the source of the problem, but all the things around it to deactivate it.
Yeah.
Right? So you can shut down the engine per se.
Yeah, because
it's not the ideal outcome, especially if they've got like a blood artist. You are taking pain to make these decisions, but those are the correct decisions.
Yeah, but hopefully they have to sacrifice the blood artist to save Yahini. And maybe they won't do that. I don't know.
Force the decision. Force the outcome. Yeah. That's how you're going to break it. But we'll know with more data. But in our group, we've seen this go around. It's just different. It's a different mindset of beating that card. And I think I've got it figured out. I believe you do as well. Others will learn this because it's a meta that's going to be built. Because this card does have the potential, with it being rarity downshifted, to perhaps build a little bit of meta around it, right? Have to, as we said, play around these type cards. And that's what's interesting with a rarity restricted type cube, especially with downshifts. Would you mind moving down to the next group? And we're going to go into, I picked out some pieces of fodder, right? We've kind of covered the engine components, the Zulaport cutthroats and all the things that did the painting, right? And the next thing we did was kind of the sack outlets. But would you mind going over, Chris, some of these really interesting choices? I picked weird ones intentionally that I thought played into the fodder. These are they're going to work, clocking in, and they're going to die.
Well, yeah, the first one is a classic. It's been around a long time, and a lot of people know it. It's the Reassembling Skeleton. Costs 1 and a black for a 1/1 for a Skeleton Warrior, and doesn't have any abilities except this one, where you can return it from the graveyard to the battlefield tap by playing a 1 and a black.
What I really like about Reassembling Skeleton in here is that having it in the same environment as Gut is terrifying. The fact that a realistic curve could look like something turn 1, Reassembling Skeleton, and then immediately Gut on turn 3 is horrifying. And I love it.
Yes, and Reassembling Skeleton's been in there since day one, just because I've always wanted there to be an Aristocrats package in this cube. And when design mistakes early on were things like Skull Clamp, and it was absolutely disgusting with that. Skull Clamp got cut shortly after somebody pulled that off.
And you know what? Our friend Carrion Feeder's looking at Reassembling Skeleton and saying, hey, it's free real estate.
You are a +1/+1 counter, basically.
You're Reassembling Skeleton? Okay, I'll sacrifice it to make a +1/+1 counter.
That's right. Okay, we're moving on to the next card in our analysis of Sammich's Peasant Cube. And This one is a bit of a favorite of mine, and the reason is because I have like the weird like art of it, and I just decided to throw it in a deck one day, and it was fun. And that's really all the criteria that I need sometimes to really love a card. And this one is Lagomos, Hand of Hatred. This is 1 colorless, 1 black, 1 red for a legendary creature, human shaman. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, which I will not do because I've already sacrificed it to Carrion Feeder. And then you can tap and search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate only if 5 or more creatures died this turn. That's a pretty hefty requirement, but you're getting a 1/3 for 3 that's generating 3/1s that are attacking, causing some pressure. Sorry, 2/1, not a 3/1. You're getting 2/1 creatures each turn that you're being able to attack with. They have trample, they have haste. You can sacrifice them to your Carrion Feeder. High pressure card, a lot of power, a lot of pace with a card like this. And this is why I love a card like this so much.
Yeah, that card's been great ever since I put it in. It's another one of those great. Rakdos is full of signpost cards for this type of thing, archetype.
I run this in the Munson Cube, not because I'm really supporting anything except for it's just sick and metal as AF, right? So,
it's got chains. It's full Rakdos.
It's literally the cover that I'm going to grab at the record store for no reason. May, I think Rally would be in your wheelhouse. Do you mind covering this card?
Sure. So the next one is Rally at Hornburg, which is 1 and a red sorcery. Create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, and then humans you control gain haste until end of turn. What a good card. The fact that you are making 2 1/1 bodies that immediately come in with haste is huge.
Yeah, this is one of the best of these type of cards, and there have been a bunch of these throughout most of them make goblins. One of them makes a dinosaur and a human. It's a forever friends forever or something. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah,
but this one's the best because it gives the tokens have haste. It's fantastic. So when I saw this was printed, this went both in Pauper and Peasant quite quickly.
What I love about cards like this is with an aristocrat, we'll just say a blood artist, it's sitting back doing nothing. It's watching the game happen. These type of cards are putting pressure from that haste. They have to, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's no positive outcome here.
Right.
You're going to take the 1 if you don't want to block it, or you're going to take the 1 on the backfield if you did. So I love those type of pressure cards with an aristocrats package. And that's why I picked this unique package. There's a lot of cannon fodder. There's a lot of mixed goblins. There's all these things that are common to lists, but I wanted to pick out some of these cards that I felt were more interesting and a little bit more unusual that maybe peasant curators had perhaps overlooked.
So the next one we'll talk about, or the final one in this one, is Oketra's Monument. This is one, it's been around for a while. I think Amonkhet, or I believe so. But for 3 mana, you get a legendary artifact, and it's basically considered a white card because it makes white creature spells cost 1 less. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. And this is great, a great little token engine, and also it just makes all your white spells cost less. So it's been wonderful. You don't have to be in white to get the benefit because you can cast any creature spell to get the token, which is nice sacrifice fodder for your Carrion Feeder, as Stu has pointed out.
I hear this is Judith's least favorite card in the entire cube, though. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go over.
I really wish I could make the cricket sound.
Okay, sorry about that.
So that's kind of a very top level, and there's a lot, and I really encourage the listeners to look at Sammich's list, which I'll share in the show notes. I know you got a lot of followers already, right?
Yeah.
And people have now had exposure to how amazing this cube is at CubeCon 2023. And as he said, he had a lot of player feedback. We're looking for the actual photographs to give more, etc. But that is kind of the top level gist of the Aristocrats as far as the engine piece. But what's so neat about Aristocrats is, like we said, it's kind of peanut butter and jelly with this next one, this high level, high tier package that he has. Chris, would you mind explaining what goes so well, meshes so well with Aristocrats?
Yeah, it's the persist combo, basically. And the way it works is you basically have a creature with persist. And when a creature with persist dies, it comes back from the graveyard with a -1/-1 counter. And it does its ETB again. So the creatures usually have an ETB, and then they'll come back, do the ETB again. But this time they have the counter, and if they die with the counter, they can't come back. Well, the way you break that is you put a creature in that can add a +1/+1 counter to them when they enter the battlefield. And therefore removing that -1/-1 counter, so you can just keep basically infinitely sacrificing
resetting
them.
the
Yeah, you're
persist.
just resetting them. And this has been done in, in constructed formats, I think, and everything like that. I don't really pay attention to those as much. But the reason I put this in here is just, it's a fun little achievement as far as I'm concerned, because it's really hard to do in this. There's not really any tutors short of Lagomos, I guess, if you have 5 creatures die, which can happen with this combo, but that's assuming you have the combo out already. But it's, like you said, it's a way to break stalemates. It's just a really neat build. And if you can assemble it, it's like putting together this nice puzzle that you've been able to, because you have to have the persist card. You have to have a card that gives +1/+1. Then you have to have a free sack outlet. And then you have to have
ideally an aristocrat.
Ideally an aristocrat to help.
Unless it has
make
a built-in like Punisher effect.
Because not all of them do.
We'll talk about some of those, but the gist is that it breaks stalemates. And I realize the creatures in your environment aren't vanilla. They're not even hardly French vanilla anymore. We've talked about power creep.
Very few of that.
But there was definitely a time where, when we talked about this in a previous episode, where I built my first iteration of a pauper cube, and it was hot garbage. But that was creature versus creature in combat where nothing could get over, right? King of the hill, and eventually something would bleed over, and that's how you'd win a game. But even with your high density of 50% of the cube as creatures, there is that potential of 2 armies locking horns and no way to go. And having something like this, in my mind, not only unlocks the Johnny Ginny mind and allows them an avenue to express themselves, it also stops stalemates. Like, that's what I meant by that, is if you're sitting around, you can't move forward, I can't kill you with combat damage, you won't let me through, and vice versa. If I can just sit back and pull off these components, I can go infinite and do a thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is really weird in a rarity-restricted cube.
It is, but like I said, you need several pieces to make this work. And I did hear about someone at CubeCon doing it.
And they liked it.
Yeah, and they loved it. They said they had a good time.
It was our good friend Nick's brother, if I'm not mistaken, right? Pulled it off. Shout out to Necroid, right?
That's right, yes.
One of our Patreons. But either way, it's something that inspires people. It's kind of it's not necessarily the aha, because it's a known entity, a known quantity. But I think it gives a lot of flavor, something more depth to this type of environment. May, what are your thoughts on pushing these type of strategies in a rarity restricted cube?
So what I love about this strategy, and for context, the persist combos are probably some of my favorite combos in Magic, like in terms of just like 1 to 3 card combos, because in limited, they are very draftable. I am not going to feel bad picking a Murderous Redcap just on its own, and I'm not going to feel bad taking a Grumgully on its own. But if I can get both, then we're cooking. And that's what we love to see. And I disagree. It does create aha moments, because even though all these cards are playable on their own, it's not an aha moment until you start seeing the other pieces in the packs. That's when it becomes the aha moment of, oh, I can make this deck now.
Yes, and it's really great when someone does figure that out. And unfortunately, our meta is, they all know about it. So what'll happen is they'll see a piece of it and draft it so no one can do it. Yeah, because they don't want to die to it.
Classic.
So that actually has happened a lot.
Even if you're hating these components out, May brought up a good point, and we're going to go over these cards as individuals, but they're standalone, and they actually do other form and function as well. So they're not trap cards. They're not they're not parasitic in any way. They're just value engines, and it's a sum of the pieces. If you pull it together, then you have a complex engine. But you don't need the engine. May, I cannot in good conscience steal the first card from you, because it would be wrong.
It's Grumgully. Grumgully the Generous is 1 red-green legendary goblin shaman, 3/3. Each other non-human creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. And the reason why you're mentioning it is because it's in my fake cube.
There you go.
And I drafted it. It's so good.
The thing about Grumgully and Murderous Redcap is I was extremely close to putting them in the fake cube. I was so tempted to do it.
Right.
It's not that I feel like that the fake cube doesn't have answers for it, or it would be too oppressive there. It is more of the fact that I don't want to deal with -1/-1 counters.
That makes sense. That's perfectly acceptable.
But
you mentioned Murderous Redcap. I think this is a favorite of Stu's, so I'm going to go ahead and have that one. This is a fantastic card.
This is a favorite of mine because it's a combo piece. It's a 3-card combo piece with the right cards that
Absolutely.
I don't think you're going to find in this cube, but either way, great card. So Murderous Redcap, 2 colorless, and then 1 black-red, 1 black-red for a creature goblin assassin. When Murderous Redcap comes into play, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player and has Persist, and it's a 2/2. Strong.
Yes. Even on its own, it does things.
You know what
it
it's
shocks
great
things.
for? Sacking twice to Carrion Feeder.
I think he's referring to World Gorger, isn't he? That combo piece where you
We're gorgeous with Inanimate Dead, and it just makes infinite
and
mana.
then you do and then Murderous Redcap, and you go back and forth. Isn't that the one you do with? That's your payoff.
I mean, it
It's your
can be, I
component.
guess, because
It
it
can
comes
be.
back
Yeah,
in. Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely not going to find that here. But yeah,
No,
it's
no.
three. It's the 3 pieces.
Yeah.
The
You'll
next
find
one.
Animate Dead, but you won't find
The next
War
one, I'm
Gorger.
going to throw a curveball at May. It's not so much. I know we talked about this. You're a huge fan of unicorns, and I didn't look at your list before I drafted it. And I'd like to
Am
know.
I a huge fan of unicorns?
Well, one in particular, unicorn. And did you add this next one?
No, it's not in the fake cube.
Aw, boo. Good Fortune Unicorn for 1 colorless and 1 green and 1 white. You get a creature unicorn, 2/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. Very much like Grumgully-ish, but not restrictive.
Yeah.
And then they really play into this beautiful Naya package where you're just doing 1/1 counters. It's
Yep.
value engine on that alone, right?
Yes.
That's what's so neat about these components.
Because there is a +1/+1 counter theme in the cube itself. So it works pretty well with these. These are really nice in that Naya package.
So you had the loneliest unicorn in the Fey Cube, May, and you decided, we talked about this one before. Which one did you stick with?
I ended up cutting all the unicorns, unfortunately.
Boo.
I need to put a unicorn back in. I was thinking Lathiel.
So the next one, I still run this in my Powered Vintage
Yeah,
Cube.
I
if
think
I'm
it's
not
still in
mistaken. Would you mind
mine,
taking
maybe.
this away from
Yeah,
us?
this is the classic kitchen Finks. This is 1 and for green-white hybrid and green-white hybrid. You get an oof, which is a great creature type. I love just to say
Except
it.
in Artifact, apparently.
Right. Well, when it collects things, it's pretty bad. Yeah. So, but it's a 3/2 oof, and when it comes into play, you gain 2 life, and it has persist. And yes, this can gain you infinite life. Does it actually end the game? Not really with this combo, but it's kind of neat in that respect. Keep you alive basically forever. But it's also good against just the regular aggro, just on its own. It's a nice little sideboard card against that, or just a main deckable card because it'll survive against all that.
There's
That
actually
you can use this to trade and then gain another 2 life is
Yep.
fantastic.
It trades up really well being a 3-power creature too.
I actually love that this has the creature type oof because that's a sound that I make every time Anthony tells me that it's still in his power cube. Not to get onto the vintage thing, but
I can't remember if
anyway,
it's in mine or
moving
not.
Oh, bring back Oko. All right. So this next one we have will surprisingly play into a portion of a combo as well, which I'll cover. It's Putrid Goblin. And if you're asking yourself, why would that be? It's 1 colorless and 1 black. You get a 2/2 creature, zombie goblin. They do come back, apparently.
Yep.
Persist, and that's whenever this creature comes back, or whenever it dies, if it had no -1/1 counters on it, that's the reminder text, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/1 counter on it. Kind of plays in what we're talking about here. So, if you were to use this, for example, with Goblin Bombardment in combination with Grumgully the Generous, in combination with the Putrid Goblin, you've got an infinite loop there, right?
Yeah.
Infinite sack triggers
Yeah.
to keep throwing the Goblin Bombardment, and that's where those frees come online and they do a lot of action. That's a nice, so it's a 3-piece combo that I'll be hunting now in
That's
this cube
okay.
on the regular. It's one that,
And someone's going to keep hate drafting it from you. Don't worry. It'll happen.
we got this from the Find My Combos from the Commander Spellbook.
Oh, yeah.
Which I mentioned before in previous episodes. I run with all of our guests. And this is the one that it came up immediately. The rest of them, whenever I ran your cube, there were an infinite amount of potential combos
Yeah,
that
'cause
you were
they're missing a
one
rare.
card.
Yeah,
one
yeah.
card. But there was an infinite amount of combos that you could pull off if you had a 1 more card, but because they broke rarity restriction,
Yeah.
they didn't quite do it. So I think that's something that curators should do with these type of environments too, these rarity restriction, is use that Find My Combos. And I always say reference our good friend ChillMTG's video that demonstrates how to use that tool, but it's the Commander Spellbook. You can type that in and basically export your list out of Cube Cobra into a CSV file, copy paste, and then it'll tell you if you want them, this is what you need to add. If you don't want them, this is what you need to exclude. And it explains the combos as well too. But that was the one that I did find that was 3 components, not the typical 4 that we've ran across at this point.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting.
Well, that's okay. I'm perfectly okay having this in there. If someone does it, awesome.
It will be me. It will be me.
Sure.
Are we ready for the next curveball on my list?
I'll go for it.
Absolutely.
So, I noticed that you have Scurry Oak on your list.
Mm-hmm.
Another combo piece.
It can be, but that's what I
think
was
you're going to ask about a
to.
specific card, and I've specifically excluded that white card. I don't know if that's the one you're asking about, but go ahead.
No.
Okay.
I was going to say, have you considered that people might misread Scurry Oak, which actually leads perfectly into my point, which both of you happen to prove, is that when people see it, are they going to draft it for what it is, or are they going to draft it with the intention of comboing with it? So, Scurry Oak is a 2 and a green for a Tree Folk 1/2 with Evolve, which just means that whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it has higher power or toughness, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. But whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Scurry Oak, you may create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, there are 2 cards. There's Ivyland Denizen, which is one of the combo pieces. There was also this white card that's a combo piece, and then another colorless card that's a combo piece. But point is that when you have this plus another piece that puts a +1/+1 counter back onto it, then it becomes a combo piece. And it's what's become notorious in Peasant spheres.
Yeah.
So I had this question in mind because when we see that, hey, the Persist combo's in here, do you ever worry that even though that the Persist combo is translated to, hey, this combo's here, do you think that the same transfers to Scurry Oak?
I have thought about this. You're actually the first person to ever ask about Scurry Oak. And it's because I've considered putting in that white card that you're talking about. She's from the Lord of the Rings set. It was the Samwise his wife. I can't remember her name, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's Rosie Lane.
Rosie. It's Rosie. Yeah, it's Rosie. And because Rosie, I believe, puts a counter on things when a creature or a token enters the battlefield, and then that just keeps you make infinite 1/1s basically, and make your Scurry Oak as big as you want, basically. And I bought a Rosie thinking I might put it in, but I didn't because I did want to stay away from 2-card combos in this cube. Because that's it's too easy, in my opinion, for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it hasn't come up yet that someone has been looking for it. Yeah. And a lot of that might have to do with our meta, because a lot of them may not know about it or are, aware of it. Were you not aware of it, Anthony?
No, I definitely was aware of it.
Okay, you're aware of it. All right. But I definitely knew about it, and I even picked up a nice foil of it and everything. I stared at it for a while, and I was like,
I can't one of my draft packs, I'm okay with that.
Like, to be clear, I don't think that the combos belong in here at all with this card. And I 100% think it's playable on its own. But that's just a consideration that we have to make as curators. Is this giving the right signal?
And currently, right now, it's just kind of a little value engine that can make little 1/1s. You can, if it slots into the +1/+1 counter theme that's in the cube, and as that kind of a piece, it is in no way overpowered. It just does a thing and does it fairly well. And if someone does ask, I'll let them know there's no combo with this. But so far, you're literally the first person to ask about it, which is, like you said, probably a good thing.
So we're kind of moving over. We've tied off the Aristocrats and Persist, and how you, as a peasant, rarity restricted curator, can add these 2 different packages and have them work with complete synergy, actually, right?
Yeah.
And have the components be standalone, so you don't have to worry about using. And I'm not a big fan of the word toxic, or what's the word I'm looking for?
I'm not adding any toxic because I don't want to infect. I don't want poison in there.
I'm not a fan of words or cards that are traps, because a lot of times the Jenny Johnnies are looking for synergy components whereas these cards do in fact provide that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Stu?
I actually wanted to give a quick shout out. We do this from time to time when there's a new set being released, and there is right now, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and May mentioned about the limited amount of ways to remove a certain indestructible creature from the battlefield. Holla May. So here's one for you. This is a new one from LCI, and it is Eaten by Piranhas. 1 colorless and a blue for an enchantment aura. Has flash. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a black skeleton creature with base power and toughness 1/1. So turns it into great. Fodder for carrion feeder.
Of course.
But,
everything is
no
great
more
fodder for carrion feeder.
everything. Now you see, I love this. Is the attitude that I love to see on the podcast.
Everything is.
Everything is great fodder for carrion feeder.
They're all +1/+1 counters to that zombie.
That cannot block. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, who cares if it becomes a 6/6? Who cares if it can't block?
So I want to ask you a question. So what was your overarching idea or thoughts of CubeCon 2023? I mean,
it was a blast. It was really fun. The best part was just meeting all the different people. I really just enjoyed meeting May in person and actually getting destroyed by her in the in the Live the Dream cube. that giant pig.
I forgot about that.
But it was great. No, that was awesome. I had no problem with it. Illarg, yeah. I had no problem. It was awesome. It was really fun, and I had a good time.
Shout out to McDarby.
Oh, absolutely. That was great. Cube was awesome.
Don't feel bad. You're not the only person that got completely ruined by Ilharg, the Raised War, and that was Christian. Completely wrecking me. I think we were playing our good friend Bill's cube.
The two-headed giant cube, perhaps.
No, it was Bill's cube.
It was Christian with Bill's cube, and he just completely annihilated me.
Yep.
So, brother, I'll give you a little fist bump there. Brethren for life for getting wrecked by Ilharg.
Oh, yeah.
Illarg buddies.
Definitely don't mind losing that way. It's okay. Not at all.
You also mentioned, too, that there were a lot of personalities and celebrity and how welcome you were telling me.
Yeah,
that
it
you
was
were
really
impressed,
nice. Yeah, everyone, I mean, of course, they're just all people, but it was really nice to just meet them and have them be so welcoming, so easy to talk to. It was wonderful.
Yeah, Stu is pretty easy to talk to.
No, that's the opposite. Stu's the opposite of that.
So we've also shown in this episode, when we're having a little bit of fun here, is that the Aristocrats and Persist combo are quite okay to add to your peasant environments. We're going to see what CubeCon 2023 and the pictures say, right? Because we did get that they were powerful. That was the feedback from the room. Now we need the data because I want to see the comprehensive amount of decks that actually had a high win rate with this, because even the Persist combo, we got some one-offs. Yeah, that's neat. That's really cool. Shout out to Nick's brother that did the thing. If it wasn't, but Aristocrats, curious to see if it, and we want to know about, we're going to ask about Yahini and what the experience was from the players specifically that drafted it, because Chris is looking for that active feedback. So if you have that, throw that up on our Discord. Join it, throw it up. And then also it would be really cool, next level, is if you could join our Discord, moving past that part, add it to Stu's Deck Boast channel, right? Because we want to see these decks so we can analyze. It's not, at this point, it's not to be braggadocious. Actually, it's for us as curators to see, to have a library to reference, right? Because we want to see these feature cubes and know what worked, what didn't work. That's always the challenge, right? Because we talked about it. We're in a, just like with every other play group, Maze included, we're in a vacuum, right? And then we expose ourselves to players that look at things from different level. When you talked about like Scurry Oak and all these things, right? Maybe there's a player that saw the thing, was looking for that signal, and that might be their feedback that where's this other component, right?
Yeah, where's Rosie?
Where's Rosie? Yeah. Everybody's always wondering where Rosie's at.
Exactly, yeah.
And Jason's going to be really ashamed that it took you so long to reference, was it Bilbo Baggins' wife or whoever it was, his wife?
It was Samwise Gamgee's wife.
See, I don't read these books, but our good friend Jason's like been talking about, he spent so much money on the Lord of the Rings set. He even messaged us today that someone's got to stop me, that when he hears this episode, Jason, I want your feedback. but fun build-arounds. That's what this really comes down to.
Yeah, right? And these are some of my favorite ways to draft. I personally have tried to get that Persist combo, but it just hasn't quite come together. And it's been in there for a long time too. And it just doesn't happen. Like I said, our group hate drafts like crazy when it comes to certain things.
We want to go ahead again and say a extra special thanks to everyone who joined CubeCon 2023 and those who specifically drafted Mace Fake Cube, Uberbear's Horror Cube and Artifact Cube, mine, and then Chris's Sammich's Peasant Cube. And then we're really looking forward as curators to getting the feedback. Gwen Decker's uploading the photographs over the weekend, working on it now. It's just nice to get that data. It's something that we don't oftentimes get outside of our, insulated play groups rather. So it's really cool to get that live active feedback from other players that are thinking differently. And then I want to say thank you to all the organizers and the people who've put 7-8 months plus into getting CubeCon to work. And they're already starting to talk about it now. And that'd be people like John from Cultic Cube, John Terrell, and Zelda Zach, and Parnell, and David McDarby, and Corey, and J-Bro, and then all of the special guests that showed up like Jamie Topples, and Pleasant Kenobi, and all these people that showed up that were really pleasant and welcoming and just wanted to promote the Cube community, right? The Cube community. Yeah. It's a really big deal. And having all the pros that showed up, right? That was a big deal. That was awesome. It was a big deal because while they were there to win it, they were also like super nice to walk up to and talk to. These are people sometimes you just read about in articles.
Or you see them on YouTube and that's all you ever see. Such a unique
event, right? So I would highly, highly recommend anybody that was on the fence or those feeling the FOMO to come to CubeCon 2024. There's no reason not to. Start saving. It's the best Magic event ever.
It was the most chill event, the most just relaxed. It was really nice. Even though people were there to compete, it was still awesome that everyone was very welcoming and just you're able to talk to anybody. It was great. Even the people you're playing against, they turn it on during the game, but after the game, everyone's just laughing and having a good time. It was great.
Thank you to all the judges, man. This is like one of the most massive concentrated group of judges ever. And it's fantastic.
I don't think so.
It is. There were so many of them floating around the room. At least that's what I believe, right?
Okay.
That's in my world.
You can believe that, yes.
But I'm making my own facts as we go along. Mm-hmm. But either way, they were fantastic.
I will say as well, this year, different from last year, I definitely made the effort last year to do at least a couple of drafts in the main event each day. I definitely finished in the top 100 or 150 last year, which was probably a little easier because there was only like 167 people last year. And this year I finished 412th, I want to say, out of 416. I did only draft one cube and dropped after 2 games. So I'm going to give myself a pass on that one. But the reason why I wanted to mention that is because I did plan on doing some more of the main cube drafts, and I would definitely encourage anyone who's planning and who didn't go to the CubeCon 23 or 2022, I will definitely encourage anyone who has a love and a passion or even just an interest of Cube to sign up for the main event, sign up for the cubes that look interesting to them, all kinds of thematic and high power and the whole spectrum of cubes is incredibly fascinating. But for someone who may be a little bit apprehensive and just maybe doesn't want to be hardcore competitive in the cube environment and just wants to go along and just play more casually, there is an option to go there and just kind of hang out at the event, meet some people. There's tons of cubes that are firing across all the days of the event where you can just go and hang out with people. Lots and lots of people bring cubes and you can just go to the free play area, hang out, draft some really, really amazing cubes, even draft some of the cubes probably that were in the main event. And again, just meet some of the community and just have a good time.
And other than that, we're moving to the socials. I want to start out by saying thank you to everybody that drafted our cubes. That's just going to be part of it. That's worth its weight in gold to curators. And if you love the show, we would truly appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite player. UberCube is also a affiliate with Alter Sleeves. If you use our code, which will be included in the show notes, as well as the Buzzsprout and all the major players, you can get 5% off your purchase. Alter Sleeves, I believe Chris has Alter Sleeves on some of his. Some of those we were mentioning before, you can't get a foil of XYZ card, right?
Or the foil costs several $1,000s.
So this is an option to bling out your cube for those certain things that you're looking for, like necromancies and whatnot that don't have a printing that's in foil.
Yep.
And If you want to support the show, please use our Inked Gaming affiliate. And then one of the coolest pictures that we took at CubeCon is where everybody hung out, myself and May and Chris and Stu and all of us, and we rolled out all of our UberCube mats, covered the table. It was pretty sick, right? Those are absolutely gorgeous. And the printing and the sleeving, May's talked about.
The Inked Gaming mat is pretty great. I really love the stitching on the edges. That really helps prevent the fraying. It's just a high quality purchase. I have 2 Inked Gaming mats because I've actually gotten one before I got the UberCube one.
Nice. And you can also find us at Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod. We're highly active on there. You can reach us at UberCubeMTGPodcast at gmail.com. And you can link us on Discord. Find us on hashtag UberCube. I don't think they do hashtag anymore, but you get the point. And then what's really cool is I am one of the, I keep calling myself an associate admin of the MTG Cube drafting site, where there's well over 700 members in there now, where everybody's actively doing like pack one, pick ones. Hey, what do you think of this card? Hey, I've got this cube idea. It's a very welcoming environment. So if you don't do those other social medias, and heck, if you're even not like a person that loves Facebook, I use Facebook exclusively for this page now. It's wonderful. And it's something that it's a passion project for me that I help take care of. And then we've got moderators like Jay Bro, et cetera, that's on there helping out. And it's just wonderful and a welcoming page. So if you're looking for another outlet, there you go. And then I want to go ahead and say, if you want to support the show, we have a Patreon. It's not a meme, but I want to say thank you to some of our patrons, including our most recent, Nicholas Lapointe, also Stephen Conefall, Preston, and Sam McKinnon. Thank you all. Preston, we are working on your episode still. It is complicated, but I promised I'll work on it. And then other than that, we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube is Happy Cubing!